Hi everyone, it's Denise from Dobby Books and welcome back. So today I'm going to cover my current read, one of my current reads, and then I'm going to show you, well actually let's do the current read first, and then I'm going to show you some of the books I acquired over the week. So here we go. The current read is Procopius, The Secret History, the one that I had been looking for. And as I explained, it is Procopius, who was the official historian under Justinian's rule. Um, while he was alive, he had to write histories that were safe to write. He worked under Belisarius, who was Justinian's right-hand military man. And during Justinian's reign, of course, even though eventually Belisarius was out of the picture, Justinian's during Justinian's lifetime, Procopius, obviously working for the palace and whatnot, saw a lot of the goings on behind the scenes. And you could tell by reading this text that Procopius was bitter and resentful, angry, disgusted. You name all the negative things, and you can just hear Procopius spewing these emotions out in his words. It's broken up into three sections, three parts. And in the first part, Justinian talks about Theodora, Justinian. Procopius talks about Theodora, who was Justinian's wife. And, reading it, to me, this is what I'm seeing, right, as a woman, that the very typical default slander follows along the lines of the standard, she's a whore, plain and simple, therefore she is worthless. So I'm kind of reticent about buying everything that he says. Do I think she was a good person? No. Do I think maybe she didn't come from the best background? Yeah. But to just write a woman off and call her a whore because you don't like her, because you don't agree with her, because you're jealous of her for whatever reasons, was just such a typical thing to do to ruin a woman's reputation. And although I think Theodora was not a woman of integrity, obviously, I think she was an awful person for the things that she did. But I also, think about this. Theodora, from what I understand in this book, she came from great poverty. And when you think of people who were very poor, like during the times of in London, when you think during the time that Charles Dickens was writing, and how the women in the poorest parts of London, desperate to feed their children or to keep a roof over their head, they turned to prostitution because it's all they could do. If they had a choice, they never would have chosen that. So likewise, I think that in the case of Theodora, instead of putting an image of her as a woman who was just born this way, she was born a slut, right? That's the message that's being sent here. Rather, I think that she didn't have a whole lot of options. So she turned to a life of prostitution because this is how you put food on the table. She had sisters, at least one other sister, I think. There might have been another. And they were doing the same thing. But I'm seeing this as someone who was poor and doing whatever they could to eat. And it's unfortunate and it's sad. But when she obviously came in contact with Justinian and the power, and she was not raised in a lifestyle that understood the responsibilities of power and wealth, she obviously didn't handle it very well. So she really did some really despicable things to other people, lied about them, got them sent to prison, had them killed and or tortured, took their homes and their money, And she could just lie. She had the power to do that. So she did that. And she did it out of spite, anger, resentment, you name it. Justinian was no better. He was, I believe, the grandson of Justin, who was given the throne by the prior king, and I will think of his name in just a minute. And Justin was never raised. He came from the lower classes, basically, so he did not understand or appreciate the roles of those who had to lead a people, had to lead a nation. So there were faults in his rule, but also this grandson of his, I perceived was someone very lazy who had this cushy little life, was not given responsibility. So when he ends up having the throne, he does a disastrous job with it. All he knows in life is how to be rich and spoiled. And so he and his wife were like the perfect couple to do this. And from what Procopius is listing about Justinian's reign, is he did similar things that Theodora did. And he lied, and he was greedy for money, greedy for, he didn't eat much. It's interesting. He didn't eat very much. He didn't sleep very much either. He probably slept a couple of hours, and then he would pace through the night. But also Procopius is portraying him as a cuckold husband. Again, another stereotype, another old accusation that was made against men. That they're not man enough to control their wife, to take the lead. It's an old, tired accusation. I think he was a bad man because he was simply selfish and greedy, and he had the power to do whatever he wanted to do, and he went crazy with it. And then the third part, I believe, which I'm reading through now, looks like Procopius is covering certain not military tactics, but political things that Justinian did. So the first section was talking about Theodora, the person. The second section talked about Justinian, the person. And now this third section is talking about the rule of Constantinople at the time. And what I have to tell you is this, even though it's very informative, because it's just so much mudslinging happening in this, I find myself reading it and kind of looking and saying, is it almost done? Is it almost done? Because it's just, there's no rest. It's just this constant barrage of terrible things that each one of them did, and the results and how people suffered from it. And wow. So if you ever want to read this, understand you're going to be reading a lot of dirty laundry. It may sound like gossip to you. It may sound like, I don't know, just, but it's pretty nonstop when it comes to the negative stuff that Justinian and Theodora did. So I'm glad I got the book. I'm glad I'm reading the book, but I didn't realize just how negative it was and how overwhelming it could feel sometimes to read this. So there we go. The Secret History by Procopius. And it's not very thick either. It's a small book. All right. Books that I have acquired. I went to, I was working close to one of the libraries I used to go to. That's the library that has, it's a library in Camarillo that has the cafe and the used bookstore that's open every day. Lovely. And I decided to stop by and pay a visit. So these are some of the books that I got. This first one is Mr. Darcy's Daughters by Elizabeth Aston. And I thought this was so cool. So it's obviously it's talking about Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy after they married and they had their children. And this talks more about their lives. On the back, it says, picking up 20 years after Pride and Prejudice left off, Mr. Darcy's Daughters begins in the year 1818. Elizabeth and Darcy have gone to Constantinople, giving us an opportunity, speaking of Constantinople, giving us an opportunity to get to know their 5 daughters who have left the sheltered surroundings of Pemberley for a few months in London. While the eldest, Letitia, frets, and the youngest, Alethea practices her music, twins Georgina and Belle flirt and frolic their way through parties and balls, and Camilla, level-headed and independent, discovers what joys and sorrows the city has to offer an intelligent young woman. And there's more to that. But I was intrigued by this title. I think I'm going to enjoy reading this, and of course it's going to go in my Jane Austen collection. All right, next one. This one is entitled The War of the Worlds plus Blood, Guts, and Zombies, H.G. Wells and Eric S. Brown. This, besides having a really cool cover, look at this cover. Isn't it fantastic? I just thought, oh, I'm going to read this. It kind of satisfies the paranormal fascination in me, but a little of the sci-fi is happening there as well. And this on the back says, never before in the history of warfare had destruction been so indiscriminate and so universal. Panic descends upon planet Earth once more as H.G. Wells' terrifying cosmic invaders blaze a path of fiery destruction across Victorian England, leaving thousands of undead in their wake. Our adventurous narrator must survive the apocalyptic alien threat while fighting off raging, bloodthirsty zombies. Who will triumph when man, Martian, and flesh-eating monster meet? Packed with fearsome supernatural creatures at every turn, Wells's original masterpiece is scarier, gorier, and more suspenseful than ever. This is published by Simon & Schuster. I wonder what year this was published. Let's see. 2009. Isn't that a cool cover? Look at this. I love it. That's great. All right. Next one. I'm adding, of course, to my Newbery Medal and Newbery Honor collection, and this is Secret of the Andes by Anne Nolan Clark. And this one says, Kuzi, a modern Inca boy, leaves his home high in the Andes Mountains to learn the mysterious secret of his ancient ancestors. Accompanied by his pet llama, Misty, he slowly discovers the truth about his birth and his people's ancient glory. Now he must prove himself worthy to be entrusted with the fabulous secret from the past. Sounds like a great story. And another one I found is a Newbery Honor Medal winner, Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. I've heard of this story a lot. I've seen the title a lot. In fact, I thought I already owned it, so I had to check my log on my phone to see if I had it on my list, and I did not, so this is good. Hatchet is 13-year-old Brian Robeson is on his way to visit his father when the single-engine plane in which he is flying crashes. Suddenly, Brian finds himself alone in the Canadian wilderness with nothing but a tattered windbreaker and the hatchet his mother gave him as a present, and the dreadful secret that has been tearing him apart since his parents' divorce. But now Brian has no time for anger, self-pity, or despair. It will take all his know-how and determination and more courage than he knew he possessed to survive. That sounds like an awesome story. Hatchet. And the next one I got is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, A Brief History of Humankind. And you don't notice it, obviously, on the screen, but this book is heavy. I was holding it and I was like, why is this so heavy? And as I look inside, the pages themselves are like textbook kind of thickness to it. And it's just heavy. It's very interesting. And look at some of these illustrations here, which I think is fantastic. Someone bent a corner. Oh, blasphemy. Okay. Oh, I love this, the caves. And Sapiens. And this has French flaps, people. 100,000 years ago, at least 6 human species inhabited the earth. Today, there is just one. Us, Homo sapiens. How did our species succeed in the battle for dominance? Why did our foraging ancestors come together to create cities and kingdoms? How did we come to believe in gods, nations, and human rights? To trust money, books, and laws, and to be enslaved by bureaucracy, timetables, and consumerism? and what will our world be like in the millennia to come? And there's more to that, but this is just a little opener. I'm sure there's a regular paper stock that's used in the other editions of Sapiens, but for this particular one, it's like a textbook. And I don't know if it mentions what weight of the paper it is. It doesn't, or even the font either, but this is really different. This is Harper Perennial. Ooh, it's got raised letters. Ooh, I think that's so neato. It's a very different edition. I'm glad I got it. And the last one, now all these are the ones that I got at the library, except for Procopius. Let me move that. So these are the ones that I got at the library. And I spent a total of $8 for all these books. And when you think Sapiens alone is $25, I think I did pretty good. Now, the last one I got arrived a couple days ago, and I ordered it off of eBay. I found a new copy of this at a university bookstore I was at, and I was intrigued by the title, and I was flipping through the table of contents, and I thought, wow, I would love to read these. And this is a reader. It's a collection of writings from, gosh, so many authors. And it's entitled Readings for Diversity and Social Justice. Oh gosh, let me see. Has 40 new selections. So this is the 4th edition, so it's obviously grown over the years. The original publication date is the year 2000. So this most recent one, 4th edition, was published in 2018, and it has the different sections in it. So the first section is entitled Getting Started, Core Concepts for Social Justice Education. And then its introduction and its collection of essays, if you will. The second section is entitled Racism, with its introduction and essays. 3, classism. 4 is religious oppression. 5, sexism, heterosexism, and trans oppression. 6, ableism. 7, youth oppression and elder oppression. And finally, 8, working for social justice, visions and strategies for change. And what I like about each one of these sections is they each have their respective introduction, the collection of essays, then a subsection called Voices, and finally, this section is I really love the most, Next Steps. And I like that because you could read all day about, lived experiences. I don't want to use the word complaints, speaking out about certain injustices. But it's important that after we listen to that, which can be kind of a lot, it's good to read a proactive section on that. What can we do? And I think that's very constructive. I think I love the way that that's put together. So, and what's very interesting is they have this layout here, which lists the different sections, and then it follows certain categories. So, for example, these categories are the ones I mentioned: racism, classism, religious oppression works its way down. In another one, also another topic is discussion of issues outside of U.S. borders, and then language issues, non-English or English as a second language speakers, or use of American Sign Language rather than vocal speech. These are all these categories that these essays cover. And so on this part of the book, it lists the various essays, and I think there's 3 or 4 pages of this, listing the various essays. Let's see how I can hold this. And each one of these categories is listed here at the top with a letter. The key is here, but the letter is here of all the different categories. And all the essays and which categories those essays are covering, which I think is fantastic. What a great reference to go back to so you can quickly find the information you're looking for. I really love this. I forgot what the original price was, but it was obviously too much. Routledge, and I think I got it for 20 something, which really was a big, huge difference from the original price. So I'm happy about this. This is something I can read whenever and whatever, and I love that. Could I consider this a reference? Add it to the reference, but there you go. Reading for Diversity and Social Justice, 4th edition. And there we go, people. That's everything I have, and have an awesome weekend. We're having our heat wave started yesterday, so we've been pretty much hibernating in the house and reading and stuff. So everybody take care, be safe, stay cool. I'll see you in a few days. Bye-bye.